I feel good. I knew that would get you grooving, you know. We're about to take a deep dive
Oh, yeah.
into the incredible life and career of the one and only James Brown, the Godfather of Soul.
He really earned that title. Yeah. We're talking about a man who didn't just sing, he innovated, he challenged norms, and left a mark on music that's still felt today.
Okay, let's unpack this musical legend. Starting with his roots. Did you know James Brown's journey began singing gospel in Toccoa, Georgia?
Yeah. It's crucial to understand those gospel beginnings. Imagine this. He forms a gospel quartet while in a detention center.
Wow.
That experience clearly shaped him, and when he was paroled, it was with the promise to sing for the Lord. You can hear that gospel influence in his powerful vocals and the intensity of his performances.
Wow, talk about finding your voice in unexpected places. And speaking of intensity, he earned the nickname the hardest working man in show business. I'm exhausted just thinking about his schedule.
Over 300 shows a year sometimes. It's mind-boggling. And his dedication wasn't just about performing, it extended to his entire band. He was notorious for having strict rules and even fining band members for mistakes during performances.
Wait, really? How would he even do that in the middle of a show?
That's where it gets interesting. He was a master of control, even while dancing. He'd use hand signals during his signature moves to discreetly point out who messed up. Talk about multitasking.
Okay, that's brilliant, but also a bit intimidating. Clearly, this man was driven by something special. So let's talk about the music itself. How did James Brown revolutionize the sound of soul and create the foundations of funk?
Here's where we dive into the technical side. Think about the traditional emphasis on the downbeat in music. James Brown flipped the script, shifting the focus to the one, the offbeat.
I can hear it in my head, that driving syncopated rhythm, but what does that actually do to the feel of the music?
It creates a sense of anticipation, a push and pull that draws the listener in. Suddenly, the music feels more percussive, more rhythmic, more danceable. You can hear this evolution in songs like Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, Get Up, I Feel Like Being a Sex Machine, or even The Payback. It's that irresistible groove that makes you want to move.
And that shift to the one is considered the foundation of funk music. Right. It's incredible to think about the lasting impact of that one innovation. But James Brown's influence wasn't limited to the stage. He was also a powerful voice for social change, particularly in education.
Absolutely. Remember, Don't Be a Dropout. That song was an anthem for education. And he even donated the royalties to dropout prevention programs. His music wasn't just about entertainment. It was a platform for making a real difference. He even met with President Lyndon B. Johnson to advocate for education and address the concerns of Black Americans.
It's amazing to think about the impact he had beyond the music. His voice truly reached people on multiple levels. And speaking of reaching people, he wasn't afraid to tackle complex social issues head-on.
Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud became a defining anthem for the civil rights movement and Black empowerment. You can't separate his music from the social and political landscape of his time. It was a reflection of the struggles and triumphs of a generation.
It's so powerful how he used his music to give voice to those experiences.
But it wasn't just about anthems. He had a whole catalog of socially conscious songs. World, I Don't Want Nobody to Give Me Nothing. Just incredible. So we've got this musical innovator, this social activist, this man who pushed boundaries and defied expectations. What a legacy.
And his legacy is still alive and well today. He inspired generations of musicians across genres. Think about the impact on hip-hop, R&B, funk. It's immeasurable.
Yeah.
His music is still sampled and reinterpreted by artists today, proving just how timeless and relevant his sound remains.
And it's not just the music, it's the energy. Do you remember that scene in The Blues Brothers where he's literally preaching and singing with such raw power? It's iconic. That scene perfectly captures his ability to command a stage and connect with an audience. And it's fascinating how films like The Blues Brothers and even Rocky V introduced him to new audiences. He was able to stay relevant even after his peak popularity in the 60s and 70s.
Right, Living in America from Rocky V was a huge hit, showing he could adapt his sound while staying true to his style. What's fascinating is that his career wasn't just a straight climb to the top. There were peaks and valleys, reinventions, and collaborations. He never stopped evolving.
That's what separates the greats from the good. He wasn't afraid to try new things, to push himself creatively. His collaboration with Dan Hartman on Living in America is a perfect example of that. He blended his classic funk sound with a more modern pop sensibility and created something truly special.
It's like he was constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible, always searching for something new and exciting. That's something to admire, even beyond the music.
And it's important to remember that he faced his share of challenges along the way. His personal life wasn't always smooth sailing, and he had to navigate the complexities of being a Black artist in America during a turbulent time in history.
Absolutely. It's important to acknowledge those challenges and understand how they shaped his art and his activism. But amidst all of that, his music remained a source of joy, energy, and inspiration.
That's the power of music, isn't it? It can transcend boundaries, uplift spirits, and provide a sense of home and unity even in the face of adversity. And James Brown's music did that in spades. And speaking of joy and energy, we can't talk about James Brown without acknowledging his incredible stage presence. You mentioned his energy earlier, but he's so much more than just moving around.
Right, he wasn't just performing, he was captivating, commanding the stage with a presence unlike anything I've ever seen.
He was a true showman, turning his concerts into full-blown experiences, think theatrical dynamic, utterly mesmerizing. He understood the power of visual spectacle, using it to create an immersive world for his audience. And then there's the band. They were an extension of his energy, a force of nature in their own right.
Forget background musicians, this was a wall of sound. Multiple guitars, bass, drums, a full horn section. It's mind-blowing how he orchestrated that much sound and still kept it tight.
He demanded perfection from his musicians, and they delivered. It was a symphony of funk driven by his vocals and that insistent groove, energetic but precise, every note contributing to the whole. And you can't forget those dance moves, the splits, the slides, those iconic cape routines.
He was like an athlete up there, bringing a whole new level of showmanship to music.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's impossible to watch a James Brown performance and not be completely drawn in by his movements.
He understood the power of visual storytelling, using his body to express the music as much as his voice did. But let's not get so caught up in the spectacle that we forget the core, the music itself. We've talked about his rhythmic innovation, but his ability to blend genres is just as impressive.
Gospel, soul, R&B, funk. It all came together in this incredible melting pot of sound. He took what he knew and built on it, never afraid to experiment and create something entirely new.
That's what makes him so important. He wasn't content with following trends, he created them. And what always strikes me is that even when singing about social issues or personal struggles, there's this joy, this celebration of life in his music.
It's true. There's raw emotion, vulnerability in his vocals that makes you feel every word. You connect with him on a human level.
He was a complex figure, no doubt. But there's a sincerity, a realness that resonates with people regardless of background. He wasn't just performing, he was sharing his truth through his art. And the fact that his music is still so relevant today.
It's incredible. It still inspires new artists, gets people dancing, transcends generations. That's the mark of a true icon. You mentioned earlier how films introduced him to new audiences. But what about the other side of that coin? How did James Brown approach staying relevant as musical tastes were changing around him?
It's a testament to his adaptability. He never stopped evolving, never feared trying new things or collaborating with younger artists. He understood the need to stay fresh while honoring his core sound.
That Living in America collaboration is such a great example. He seamlessly blended his classic funk with a more modern pop sensibility, proving he could still connect with a whole new generation of fans.
He wasn't content to rest on his laurels. He was constantly pushing himself, musically and creatively. And don't forget his foray into the world of hip-hop. He recognized the power of this emerging genre and wasn't afraid to incorporate elements of it into his own music.
That's so interesting. He saw the connections, the shared energy between funk and hip-hop. He was always ahead of the curve, a true visionary. But of course, no discussion about James Brown is complete without addressing his personal life, the complexities and controversies.
He certainly had his demons. There were conflicts, legal issues, a personal life that was often tumultuous. But separating the art from the artist can be challenging. And with James Brown, it's especially important to recognize both the impact of his work and the complexities of the man himself.
He was a trailblazer. There's no denying that. He broke down barriers for Black artists, challenged social norms, and left an indelible mark on the world.
His work ethic, his drive, his unwavering belief in himself, all of it contributed to his monumental success. And he never stopped working, touring, recording right up until the end. That kind of dedication is inspiring. Now let's shift gears a bit. You mentioned how films introduced James Brown to new audiences, but his time performing behind the Iron Curtain was equally fascinating. What did you uncover about that period?
It was revelation. Honestly, I learned that he was incredibly popular in Eastern Europe, drawing huge crowds and captivating audiences with his energy and music.
It makes sense when you consider the context. His music was all about freedom, self-expression, breaking free from constraints. That message would have resonated deeply with people living under oppressive regimes.
Exactly. It's as if his music offered a glimpse into another world, a world where individuality and self-expression were celebrated, not suppressed. And those performances were legendary. The energy he brought to those stages was electrifying.
Imagine seeing him live during that era. The sheer charisma, the power of his performance. It must have been an unforgettable experience. And beyond the entertainment, he used those performances to advocate for peace and unity, speaking out against the Cold War.
That's right. He believed in the unifying power of music, its ability to connect people across cultural and political divides. It's inspiring to see how he used his platform to promote understanding between cultures.
It speaks to the universal language of music. No matter where you come from, a powerful groove can move you. A soulful voice can touch your heart. And James Brown knew how to harness that power.
It was a significant period in his career, showcasing his ability to connect with diverse audiences and to use his music to promote hope and unity. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
Because I think it's often overlooked when discussing his legacy.
It's an important piece of the puzzle. And speaking of overlooked aspects, let's spend some time talking about his relationship with his band, The Famous Flames. They were an integral part of his early success, weren't they?
I was struck by how they were more than just backup singers. They were a true vocal group, contributing harmonies and stage presence that perfectly complemented his dynamic lead vocals.
Right.
I mean, they had hits of their own, like Please, 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 and Try Me.
Right. They weren't just there to support James. They were vital to the creative process, adding depth and richness to the sound.
But I also learned that their relationship with James was often strained, especially when it came to finances.
Sadly, that's not uncommon in the music industry. Success often breeds disagreements about money and creative control. And in the case of James Brown, he was known for being a demanding band leader, which undoubtedly contributed to the tension.
He had incredibly high standards, and he expected everyone around him to meet them. But even with the conflicts, the chemistry between James Brown and the Famous Flames was undeniable.
They created something special together, a synergy that produced some of the most iconic music of the soul era. Their collaborations were messy, sure, but they also resulted in some truly groundbreaking moments in music history.
It reminds us that creative partnerships can be complex, challenging, but also incredibly rewarding. And speaking of creative collaborations, James Brown's foray into the world of film was another interesting chapter in his career.
Ah, yes. His appearances on the big screen were always a treat. Whether he was delivering an electrifying performance in The Blues Brothers or playing the Godfather of Soul in Rocky V, he brought his larger-than-life persona to every role.
I was impressed by how seamlessly he blended his musical talent with his acting abilities. He created memorable characters, like Reverend Cleophas James in The Blues Brothers, showcasing his gospel roots and his ability to command any audience.
He had this natural charisma that translated so well on screen, and of course his musical performances in those films were always highlights. It's almost as if he was playing an extension of himself, bringing his unique energy and swagger to those roles.
It's fascinating how he often chose roles that aligned with his own persona, these larger-than-life figures who exuded confidence and charisma, and his film appearances undoubtedly introduced him to a wider audience, cementing his status as a true cultural icon.
They offered a different avenue for him to connect with fans and solidified his legacy as a multi-talented entertainer. Now let's shift gears again and talk about a lesser-known side of James Brown, his role as a producer and mentor to other artists.
This was a side of him that I didn't know much about, but I was really impressed by his willingness to champion other artists, especially those just starting out.
He had a genuine desire to give back, sharing his knowledge and experience to help aspiring musicians find their voice. And he did it on multiple levels, from producing records for artists like Lynn Collins, Bobby Bird, and Vicki Anderson, to inviting younger musicians to open for him on tour.
It speaks volumes about his generosity and his commitment to nurturing new talent. He recognized the challenges of breaking into the music business and used his platform to give others a chance.
He was a demanding mentor, pushing his protégés to be their best, but also supportive, offering guidance and encouragement. And you can see his influence in the careers of countless artists who were inspired by his music and his mentorship.
He left an indelible mark on the industry, not just through his own music, but through his efforts to elevate and support other artists. It's a legacy that deserves to be celebrated alongside his musical achievements.
Absolutely. It speaks to the depth of his commitment to music and his understanding that its power extends beyond the individual. Now let's talk about the broader impact, his legacy. How has James Brown's music influenced the world, both musically and culturally?
His impact is immeasurable. Honestly, he's considered one of the most significant figures in 20th century music, and his innovations continue to shape the sounds we hear today. Think about the driving rhythms, the tight horn arrangements, those raw, soulful vocals. They've been emulated and sampled by countless artists across genres.
He transcended genre boundaries, influencing everything from hip-hop to rock pop to electronic music, and his willingness to use music to address social and political issues set a precedent for artists who came after him.
Songs like Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud weren't just entertainment. They were anthems for the civil rights movement, expressions of Black joy and resilience, and powerful demands for equality.
His music gave voice to the voiceless, became a soundtrack for change, a celebration of Black pride and identity, and his influence continues to be felt today. We see it in everything from contemporary dance moves to fashion trends, from artistic expressions to the ongoing fight for social justice.
His legacy is multifaceted, encompassing music culture, social change, and more. He was more than a musician. He was a cultural icon, a revolutionary figure who transformed the music landscape and inspired generations of artists, activists, and individuals striving for a better world.
His impact goes far beyond notes on a page or beats on a drum. He sparked conversations, challenged societal norms, and empowered people to embrace their true selves. That's a powerful legacy to leave behind.
Yeah, it really is remarkable when you think about it, how one person can have such a profound impact on the world. And it all stemmed from his unwavering belief in himself and his dedication to pushing boundaries.
His story is a reminder that true artistry often comes from challenging conventions and embracing your individuality. No matter how unconventional it may seem, James Brown embodied that spirit in everything he did.
You're right. Whether it was his music, his stage presence, or his fashion, he was always pushing the envelope, creating something entirely new and exciting.
We talked earlier about his innovative use of the one, that shift in rhythmic emphasis that became a hallmark of funk. But it's important to remember how radical that was at the time. He completely flipped the script on how people experienced rhythm in music.
It's like he was rewiring our brains, making us move in ways we hadn't moved before. And his stage presence was just as revolutionary. He brought an athleticism and visual spectacle to his performances that was unprecedented.
He understood that a performance was more than just the music. It was an experience, a multi-sensory immersion. The lights, the costumes, the choreography, it all worked together to create something truly captivating.
And the level of control he had over every aspect of the show was incredible. Remember those hand signals he'd use to direct his band while dancing? He was a master conductor, even in the middle of those high-energy routines.
It speaks to his meticulous nature, his dedication to perfection. He wasn't satisfied with simply being good. He strived for greatness in every detail, and that dedication is reflected in the quality of his music, the precision of his performances, and the lasting impact of his legacy.
It's amazing to think about how one person can have such a profound effect on an entire industry, even on culture itself. And to think it all started with a young boy singing gospel in Toccoa, Georgia.
His story is a testament to the power of talent, hard work, and an unwavering belief in yourself. James Brown was a true visionary, a musical pioneer, and a cultural icon whose influence will continue to resonate for generations to come.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of James Brown, I'm curious, what stands out most to you? What will you be thinking about long after this conversation ends?
For me, it's the reminder that true artistry is about more than just technical skill. It's about passion, innovation, and the courage to challenge the status quo. James Brown embodied all of those things. He never stopped pushing boundaries, never stopped evolving, and never stopped inspiring.
That's beautifully said. And for me, it's the sheer power of his music to transcend time and culture. Even today, decades after his passing, his music still has the ability to move people, to make you feel something deep within your soul. It's a testament to the enduring power of rhythm, soul, and self-expression.
Couldn't have said it better myself. James Brown was truly one of a kind, and his music will continue to electrify and inspire us for years to come.
So true. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the life and legacy of James Brown, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment letting us know what resonated most with you. We love hearing from you.
And as you continue to explore the world of music, remember the lesson of James Brown. Don't be afraid to push boundaries, to experiment, to find your own unique voice. Who knows, maybe you'll inspire a generation too.